All right, we back. Cool. Wow, this is going to be a fun one. We have so much to unpack here. Trump is a fascist. It's plain and simple for anyone to see. The man wants a complete unification between the private and public sectors. He wants to punish his political enemies, etc. However, lucky for all of us living in fascist land, he's incredibly funny. The man is a natural-born entertainer, made for Broadway. What could have been? You know, you close one eye and you look at Trump and he's tells it like it is, a real straight shooter politician. Even occasionally, even if accidental, speaks truth to power. Then if you open up both eyes, though, and you draw focus on him, you realize he's just yet another divisive, fear-mongering, self-obsessed member of the power elite who is friends with Jeffrey Epstein. I've always said, though, if there's one plus side to Trump, it's that he threw away the dog whistle that Republicans and neocons have been so reliant on for the past couple decades. He wears his fascistic qualities on his oversized sleeve. Case in point, his cabinet selection. And if you look at this ragtag group of Muppets that he's assembled so far, you'll see a very different Republican Party than you have in the past decade or two. This is the new right, ladies and gentlemen, different from the old right. The new right and the old right have basically everything in common. They're overwhelmingly pro-American patriotism, lower taxes for rich people, tough on immigration, pro-capital, etc. The difference is the new right claims to be anti-war, in sharp contrast to the right wing of the past, particularly George Bush's, of recent memory. This is most exemplified in their commitment to ending the Ukraine-Russian war on day one. If you watch any sort of podcast or any sort of clips on social media, you'll see all of the Trump surrogates coming out and talking about the Ukraine war. And honestly, ending the Ukrainian-Russian war would be fantastic. I truly, sincerely hope that they do that, or even just improve it slightly. That would be wildly successful. The Russia-Ukraine war has been going on for over 3 years now, and with no end in sight. Biden has brought us on the brink of World War III by allowing Ukraine to fire missiles deep into Russia. With Putin even talking about now the threat of nuclear retaliation, I truly hope that Trump and his team are successful. I truly do. However, there is a lot of reasons to doubt their sincerity. Despite a lot of the MAGA surrogates espousing this anti-war rhetoric or trying to paint Trump as like that, he's been this anti-war candidate this entire time, is completely false. Trump has a long record of being the literal exact opposite. That is pro-war. And I'm just going to take a quick second to completely dispel this notion and just to lay it all out there for once and for all. If we look at Trump's first term, it is true that he did not start any new boots-on-the-ground conflicts. However, for every conflict and every war that he inherited, he greatly exacerbated. He increased the amount of troops sent abroad, deepened the reliance on private contractors, increased the amount of civilians killed by U.S. airstrikes by 330% from 2016. The last full year of the Obama administration. We saw 4 consecutive years of growth in the Pentagon's budget. He dropped more bombs on Afghanistan in 2019 than any other year since the Pentagon started reporting it in 2006. In 2018 alone, he set an all-time record for Afghanistan civilian deaths with 3,804, 927 of which were children. So those are 6 examples right there that Trump is not anti-war. But let's go even a little bit further. If you want to look specifically just at a country like Yemen, for instance, Trump gave Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates full support in their military intervention into the country of Yemen, even going as far as using his veto power to override bipartisan efforts from Congress to stop the support. Or probably the best example would be Iran, where he assassinated a top-ranking military general. Donald Trump is not anti-war. So the promise of the new right and this new Trump regime as being somehow anti-war or, different than your mom and dad's, George Bush's or Ronald Reagan's, the Republicans of the old era, I feel like is false. The reality is this is a clusterfuck of different clowns with no coherent ideology, repeatedly throwing shit at the wall, seeing what will stick. And as far as the anti-war stuff, I think really what we're going to see in Trump's presidency or what they're going to try to force on us is a Cold War with China. Probably also looking at like an extra $55 billion boost for Pentagon spending, which would crack well over $1 trillion total. And you'll see this is traditional Fourth Reich playbook. If anyone listens to my podcast, you know about the Fourth Reich, the recontextualization of fascism. It's no longer boots on the ground, invading a country, a sovereign nation, and shooting people, big war, no more of that. It's soft, it's diet fascism, it's sanctions, it's strategical strikes, drone strikes, regime change, or the ever-present war on terror. Plus, with this cabinet, you're going to see all the new flavors of the week, all the war on woke, providing justification to slash all sorts of regulation. And of course, the big green light for Netanyahu and Israel to continue their genocide. Again, anti-war my fucking ass. And by the way, shout out to Joe Biden for getting that all started. And when we go through his cabinet over these couple videos, you're going to see basically two camps, right? The power elite, full of the billionaires and the people in the in-between types that I've talked about on my podcast, people that connect government with CEOs. And then on the other side, you'll see unprincipled opportunists. And these are the people that are basically have no coherent ideology. They're just professional politicians. They've climbed and fucked and sucked their way up to wherever they are going to be. And they're just hopping on whatever bandwagon we'll have them on. The unprincipled opportunists are way more fun to cover, and I'm going to spend more time on them because they're just a particular type of orc that is just so pathetic. I'm also low-key just obsessed with them. One last note is you'll notice that some of these individuals I'll talk about, no spoilers, are no longer in the running to be appointed. I could have taken them off, but they're just so fun to talk about that I had to keep them on. So first off, we're going to talk about Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, and that is none other than Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi was most famously a state representative out of Hawaii. I think that the most salacious thing about Tulsi Gabbard that people are focusing on right now is that she grew up in a cult called the Science of Identity Foundation that celebrates this obscure guru dude as like a godlike figure. And this is important because the cult is against things like homosexuality and science, which is normal, but it's also radically against Islam. And this will paint a lot of Tulsi's kind of underlying biases and overall worldview in ways that you'll see in a sec. So her father, Mike Gabbard, was a Hawaiian senator. And you'll notice that too, a lot of like Nepo baby stuff. Mike Gabbard was a Hawaiian senator. He belonged to the cult as well. His wife, Tulsi's mother, was actually the treasurer of the cult. Interesting enough. So all in the family. She actually started her career as a top aide in an organization called Stop Promoting Homosexuality Hawaii. That's the name of the organization. Seriously. Stop Promoting Homosexuality Hawaii. It was run by her father, and the group preached the use of conversion therapy to make gay people not gay anymore. So eventually she'd follow in her father's footsteps and get into politics, running as a Democrat in Hawaii, miraculously and conveniently abandoning all of her right-wing opinions as it pertains to gay people, Islam, and science, and even allegedly stopped following the cult. What's really sad is Tulsi actually had a pretty promising career in politics. Like, if you go through her record, she has a solid career of being vocally anti-regime change, being pretty outspoken on certain foreign policy issues. She even once rightfully called Trump Saudi Arabia's bitch, which is pretty epic. She even stuck up for Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, even appealing directly to Trump when he was president, asking them to pardon them. He didn't. And she even endorsed Bernie Sanders, which is wild, even giving like speaking for him at rallies and whatnot. However, during this entire time, despite having some legitimately anti-war opinions, she never gave up her fear-mongering of what she called radical Islam. And this included a full-throated support for Israel's war on Palestine and a desire to wage war on the same radical Islam. She's even gone on record as conflating Hamas with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. I guess to her, it's all the same. This war on terrorism, you'll see, and I brought it up before, it's this sneaky way that these neocons can get away with being anti-war, right? It's like you're not at war with a country, you're at war with an idea of the boogeyman. We're not at war with Iraq, we're at war with Al-Qaeda, right? It's something right out of the Fourth Reich playbook. Tulsi's opinions, really, when you look at them, you zoom out and you look at them, they're very reminiscent of the Bush-Cheney opinions to a certain extent, at least the validations, the excuses she uses to justify such military action against individuals. To all the Gen Z people or younger people that don't know about the war on terror panic, after 9/11, war on terror was used as this sort of ambiguous, amorphous way of just essentially printing money to invade the Middle East. It's designed to be vague on purpose. In the context of Tulsi, you can sort of look at this obsession with, being Islamophobic as an extension of her upbringing in that cult. There's something that's very evangelical about it if you look at her policies and what she supported throughout her career. She's flip-flopped on many things, as we'll see, but that seems to be one thing that she's remained consistent on throughout. But why I think Tulsi's such a perfect fit for Trump and the new right is that she exemplifies that phony anti-war stance. No war unless it's against Muslims or the East. And in which case it doesn't count because it's not war, it's war on terrorism. That's different. This is perfectly exemplified in the flip-flop she's done as it pertains to accusations of foreign entities controlling individual American citizens and whatnot. She rightfully so, a couple years back, expressed criticisms about NATO and Russia and that conflict and as it pertains to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which was a very taboo topic to bring up for anyone to bring up at the time, let alone a Democrat, which she was at the time. It was sort of like chipping away and breaking down whatever's left of the Red Scare, right? Of like maybe Russia isn't 100% to blame in this scenario. It was nuanced. She's even paradoxically been critical of Israel at times by, publicly calling out Netanyahu and the IDF for the methods of which they use to indiscriminately murder Palestinians. But simultaneously, she will also go on to constantly affirm how important Israel is to the balance of the world every chance she gets, even going as far as taking paychecks to speak at Zionist conferences and saying a bunch of nonsense. It's very weird. She's all over the place, as we'll see is a theme with a lot of these undisciplined opportunists. So from going from a Democrat and a progressive that supports Bernie to now a new right, anti-woke based conservative, I don't know what accounts for that. However, I found this kind of interesting as like a Joker origin story here. Hillary Clinton publicly called her a Russian asset. Tulsi actually sued her for defamation. Of course, didn't win, didn't go anywhere. She dropped the lawsuit. You're not going to beat the Clinton Foundation. But I feel like that burn, you could tell that it really hurt Tulsi. What's also extra ironic is after being called a Russian asset, years later, now she's calling students protesting against Israel's genocide of Gaza Iranian assets. So you either die the hero, live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right? I think at the end of the day, my read on Tulsi is she's just a classic swagger jacker. She rode Bernie's coattails for 6 years, trying to get all that progressive clout. Didn't work out. Bernie got rat fucked. We all know the story there. And now she's jumping on Trump's MAGA bandwagon. Next up, we have Trump's pick for Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator, Dr. Mehmet Oz. Mehmet Oz is most famous for being a television doctor. However, he was a real heart surgeon at one point, particularly in the 80s and 90s. His TV personality is mostly known for talking about phony supplements and weight loss cures and mysterious routes that you can take to, get a boner or whatever. One particular miracle weight loss cure that he recommended ended up costing him millions of dollars in a lawsuit. But the real important part with Dr. Mehmet Oz is throughout his career, he's been enmeshed in the private side of healthcare and medicine. This guy has a deep web of connections within that space. For instance, he owns stake in iHerb, a supplement store. He's listed as the inventor of a medical device designed to treat leaky heart valves that has been recalled by the FDA 3 separate times and may be connected to hundreds of deaths. Most importantly, though, are the millions of dollars in stock that Oz and his wife hold in private healthcare companies such as United Health Group and CVS Health. This is crucial in understanding Oz's policies. This is because Oz's centerpiece policy is his own healthcare plan called Medicare Advantage for All. The plan would move seniors and most Americans off Medicare and into private insurance plans, with the goal to completely eliminate public Medicare entirely and fully privatize the program. How would America pay for Mehmet Oz's plan? The workers would. 20% payroll tax. Where would that money go? Straight into the bank account of the companies that he and the power elite own. So as of now, Medicare is funded with a 15.3% payroll tax. Mehmet Oz's plan would actually increase the amount that workers would be taxed, which of course would disproportionately affect the lower and middle classes, as always. And just a fun fact, it's actually a higher tax than what Bernie Sanders would put on the lower and middle classes for his Medicare for All. On top of it just being a clear grift to scam money out of the taxpayers directly into the companies that he owns stock in's pockets, by transitioning to a private plan, it gives control to the private companies to deny coverage to individuals based off specific ailments or pre-existing conditions without any justification. So in the case of Mehmet Oz, he's just another one of the power elite who's just trying to hop onto the bandwagon and scrape off as much money as he can for him and his buddies. Different than the unprincipled opportunist, but nonetheless equally as pathetic. So last on this part 1 episode, we have Trump's former pick for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz. And boy, am I bummed that he dropped out. We were robbed of what would have been such an electric month of him being confirmed and all damning information to come out. Whoever talked Matt Gaetz into dropping out, shame on you. Shame on you. You owe us entertainment. Matt Gaetz, needless to say, would have been the most, or maybe is, I guess, depending on how you look at it, baffling choice for Attorney General in maybe U.S. history. Not only because the man has barely practiced law in his entire life, but because he is plagued with some of the weirdest and depraved scandals in U.S. politics history. This is some True Detective Season 1 Yellow King shit. So Matt Gaetz is son of Don Gaetz, Florida State Senator. And his early life is full of just typical rich kid shit, being picked up on a DUI in which he would end up not being charged, and the officer that stopped him would end up losing his job, and the whole thing would get swept under the rug. That's Rugrats shit. That's nothing. The best story, the story that I've wanted to talk about so badly, maybe the reason I made this whole video, comes from when he was in college. Now, I want to preface this all by saying this is all alleged. None of it's ever been confirmed. The story comes from high-ranking members of the Republican House of Representatives in Florida, and this was obtained through opposition research, through a private detective who talked to these people off the record. However, when we go through the rest of Gaetz' life, you'll see that something like this is in the realm of possibility. That's all I'll say. According to these anonymous sources, while at college at Florida State University, Matt Gaetz was allegedly involved in a gay sex ring involving exclusively African-American males. Among all the debauchery, there was allegedly an autoerotic asphyxiation game between Matt and other male participants that took place at his apartment, in which one of the participants, who may have been his roommate, accidentally died. Allegedly, Matt had his daddy, the state senator in Florida, move the body from Tallahassee, where he lived and where he went to college, to Jacksonville to give them plausible deniability. Now, this part that I'm about to talk about is fact. A body was found in Jacksonville. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement initially investigated the death as a homicide, but the agency was later politically pressured to rule it a suicide, and nothing was basically ever heard of this scenario again. Now, there is no way, obviously, of knowing whether or not this is true. However, there is a public obituary you can find in the newspaper in Jacksonville of the man, and his age, his personal information all match what the anonymous sources had said about him. This is public info. I'm not going to put his picture or his name on here, but you can look it up for yourself. And again, this sounds far-fetched and crazy, some True Detective shit. However, when you learn more about Matt Gaetz throughout the years, it's not out of the realm of possibility. This dude seems to be a fucking sicko. So he gets out of that unscathed. He passes the bar, practices barely any law at all, and then immediately basically follows in his father's footsteps and gets into Florida state politics. Culminating in 2016, Matt's elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. He was a ultra-right, God-fearing, conservative Christian, family values, which is fucking hilarious. 2020, a longtime associate and friend of Matt Gaetz that goes by the name of Joel Greenberg is arrested and charged with several federal offenses, among them sex trafficking a 17-year-old girl. Greenberg strikes a plea deal in which he agrees to assist the government with an investigation into Matt Gaetz, whose name had surfaced in connection with Greenberg's crimes. In 2021, it's revealed that the Justice Department is looking into allegations that Matt Gaetz paid a 17-year-old girl to cross state lines and have sex with him, which would constitute sex trafficking charges. Now, it's tempting to chalk this up to just yet another conservative witch hunt, of which that absolutely does exist, and there are countless examples of that. The Justice Department is not perfect, and they do weaponize that shit. That's real. However, knowing the documented shit that we know about Matt Gaetz, we have to at least assume that there's no smoke without fire. And this is made even worse because around this time, this dumbass is sharing photos on his phone with other members of the House on the House floor of naked photos of women that he had had sex with. Multiple people confirming this. Some of the girls may have even been underage. So there was definitely a legitimate ick factor with Matt Gaetz among even Republicans in the House. This behavior and this ick inspires the House Ethics Committee to form their own investigation on top of the Justice Department's investigation. 2 investigations into one man. So Matt Gaetz at this point is spending every breath he has, declaring his innocence, calling it a witch hunt, and even asking Daddy Trump for a pardon. Then, in an effort to try to lower his sentence, Joel Greenberg goes on record stating that Gaetz had paid multiple women for sex, including the 17-year-old in question, and claims that there are Venmo transactions to back up his claims. Ultimately, Greenberg, Matt Gaetz' friend and associate, co-worker, etc., is sentenced to 11 years in prison. And this ends the initial Justice Department investigation. However, the House Ethics Committee investigation is still going on. Fast forward, more women come forward, saying they witnessed Matt having sex with a 17-year-old. Verifiable Venmo transactions leak online, showing payments to the 17-year-old girl in question. Weird shit like, thank you, traveling funds, thinking of you, or just like weird shit that, like, I hope no man is writing on Venmo. And this is where it gets juicy, because days before the House Ethics Committee is set to drop their findings on a member of their ranks, Matt Gaetz, Gaetz, the man being investigated, is nominated for Attorney General by Trump and instantly resigns from the House of Representatives. This basically stops the House Ethics Committee's investigation in its tracks, because why would they release a report on someone that doesn't belong to the House? Now, we all know where it goes from here. Literally today, as of recording this, Matt Gaetz has dropped out and is no longer in contention for Attorney General, and he is also no longer a member of the House of Representatives. So I think my theory here is that Matt Gaetz, being a loyal and vocal supporter of Trump did him a favor by giving him cover, an excuse to drop out of the House of Representatives just before this damning information was set to come out. Think about it. If he didn't have an excuse and just dropped out, that would basically be him admitting that he was guilty or he had something to hide. This way he can say, no, I thought I was going to be Attorney General. I dropped out, providing the perfect cover. And now Matt Gaetz, a.k.a. the Yellow King, lives to see another day. Honestly, I'm filing Matt Gaetz under the unprincipled opportunist. Even though he is somewhat of an in-between type in the power elite, comes from a super ultra elite rich family, and he navigates the government and CEO world pretty well. He doesn't have any sort of like resolve or any sort of ideological consistency. And it seems like he's just willing to cling on to whatever type of power he can get his hands on. That's just a pathetic dweeb. So that concludes part 1 of Trump's cabinet of Muppets. We got many more to go. Some of these people are just absolute gems. We still got Linda McMahon, Marco Rubio, Howard Lutnick, Mike Huckabee, one of my faves. Oh, and of course, RFK Jr. So stay tuned. We'll put out part 2 next week. It's a wild world we live in. Take care of each other.